You're listening to Potty Mouth Radio, the home of movies, music, television, and comedy.
And now, the hunt for the perfect album.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hunt for the Perfect Album with Billy and Dave, where this week it was Dave's turn. Do you want to tell the people what you threw at me, buddy?
The Dark Lord of Aussie poetry music.
Yes, that's right.
Nick Cave.
Yes, not just Nick Cave, him and his seed. We are talking about Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
And the Bad Seeds, my favourite band of all time.
Oh, really?
Band, I would say.
Really?
Oh, my
This
God,
is,
yes.
Okay.
And
All right.
have been for about 35 years.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
I have seen Nick live, I want to say like 6 or 7 times, something like that.
Yeah, right.
Going all the way back to early 90s, maybe even late 80s. Fuck, I can't remember. I'm too
So
old.
around the time, because this album came out in 91, is that correct?
I definitely saw the tour for this album.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to rack my brains whether I saw the tour for The Good Son before this.
Yeah.
And I think I did.
Yeah.
Because I've got memories of all sorts of orgasmic viewings of
So-
this song live.
So not only is this your favorite band then, given that this is what you've picked, is this your favorite album from Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds?
Look, I'm going to say yes,
Okay.
but as you would probably have with many bands, it could change on a daily basis.
Yeah,
It's definitely in the sweet spot. So I love all Cave, from Boys Next Door, Birthday Party Early, Insanity, all, punk craziness, all the way through to, his more recent, really, the guy's like 60 something now,
Yeah.
everything's kind of him on piano. It's a lot more pared back. I love all of it, but for me, his sweet spot, and it's a very personal thing, is between the albums Tender Prey and the one after this, Murder Ballads. So
Yeah,
you've
right.
got Tender Prey, you've got The Good Son, you've got Henry's Dream, and you've got Murder Ballads. And to me, that run of 4 is kind of his apex.
I was reading that he was very disappointed in this album. Not
Not
not because of the songs, but the production.
Not like, and I don't get it, because I reckon it's one of the most. This and Murder Ballads are probably the best produced in inverted commas.
Yeah. So
Maybe that's what he doesn't like. I don't know.
he was very, very unhappy. Apparently, he was working with a new producer whose whole thing was recording it live, and getting it perfect live. But then Nick was just apparently so unhappy with the mix in particular, which I think sounded fine. I mean, I did listen to the remastered version from 2010. I don't know whether maybe Nick has gone back and remastered it himself, and maybe he's happy with this one. I don't know.
And to be honest, the only track where I kind of maybe get where he's coming from is Jack the Ripper, because Jack the Ripper is one of the ones that fucking goes mental live. Like he goes off. The tour, I think it was the tour for this album, he had a hot pink t-shirt on.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you know enough about Nick Cave to know that straight away that's what?
Yeah.
And that I think that track went for about 9 or 10 minutes,
right.
and just fucking tore the roof down.
So-
So maybe that's maybe he thought this was too polished.
Yeah. So I don't know a lot about Nick Cave. Like I said last week when you gave this to me, the song I know of his mostly is Where the Wild
Kylie
Roses
one
Grow
from-
with Kylie Minogue.
Murder Ballads, yeah.
And obviously Red Right Hand from Scream. Yeah. So I knew enough about his style to know that it was, predominantly, I guess what you would describe as gothic rock. He seems to have a bit of a fascination with death and murder, and obviously he's got that very deep voice.
Interested. He's got a long-seated love with sort of Southern American
Yeah,
crime.
I'm not going to lie to you.
He's a big fan of Jim
I didn't
Thompson,
know that he
James
was Australian.
Ellroy.
I didn't.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that he was Australian until
wow.
afterwards when I looked, because I don't think he sounds Australian either. Like most Australian artists that I listen to, you can tell. Like the Locksmiths, you can tell.
In
But
interviews, you can.
It's not
but
even just his singing voice.
musically-
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the subject matter really, and his writing style. It's very South.
Well, 'cause, Mick Harvey, Roland S. Howard, and a couple of others, as out of, and I think it was they were at art school together in Melbourne,
Yeah.
and formed the Boys Next Door. And
Yeah,
the
right.
only song you would know, I Will Give You Door Door, the only album that they put out under
Okay.
that moniker.
Yeah.
But you would know the song Shivers because Screaming Jets covered it.
Okay. Yep.
And I can feel my teeth grinding already. They got the fucking words wrong. How you can cover a song is, apologies, listeners, for this brief tangent, but this has fucking irked me for about 40 years. How you can cover a song and get the words wrong is beyond me. Anyway, but they couldn't get any headway in the pub scene because their act was too wild, and pubs were not letting them come back a second time because crowds were going crazy and whatever. So they fucked off over to the UK, changed their name to the Birthday Party, and kind of that's when history started. Yep. And then they went to Berlin, and there was a whole era there. Press on Fire, and a whole era of them as the Birthday Party, who are one of the iconic sort of kind of not punk, but kind of post-punk bands.
Yep.
And then when the Birthday Party disbanded, Nick was still living in Berlin, and he was living in like this one little bed sit, just with books piled high, just writing things longhand, being a crazy manic poet, thinking he was Arthur Rimbaud, and then assembled the Bad Seeds, which, I mean, the term supergroup is kind of gone out of fashion, but it used to be a term when you had people, someone
from
who assembles
other bands.
I get my guitarist from that band you've heard of, and my bassist from, and that's essentially kind of what the Bad Seeds were. You had Blixer Bargeld as lead guitarist, who was the front man from Einstürzende Neubauten, who were one of the, along with Kraftwerk, probably one of the founders of industrial music. He is a pinnacle. Mick Harvey, who was kind of best mate brought along from Birthday Party, fine. Thomas Wiedler from the band Die Halt, Kid Congo Powers, who was doing some other stuff, Anita Lane, who was his girlfriend at the time but was doing her own thing. He sort of assembled this group of like-minded people that grew out of the ashes of the Birthday Party, and the lineups morphed over the years. People have come, people have gone, but it's always had this kind of iconic, unclassifiable identity that's different to everything else. Maybe that's why I love them so much.
Unclassified. You're right. Like when I said gothic rock before, that was kind of the only way I could think to describe it, because there's elements of folk, particularly like you said, kind of deep South American folk, more so than Australian folk.
Nick's love of crime fiction comes through on most albums.
Yeah, there is elements of punk, which again I think is kind of closely linked with folk or anti-folk to an extent. So I threw this on and I kind of didn't know what to expect.
Shit up to the bone. There was a kisses of a rain on my lips. I swiped the rain and it nearly missed. And then I went on down the road. Papa won't leave you, Henry. Papa won't leave you, boy. Papa won't leave you, Henry. Papa won't leave you, boy.
And we get into that opening track, and I really dig it.
Nice.
It's like I said, it's kind of it's folk rock, I guess is the way I would describe that song. And that song, of all the ones on the album, I think has most of that deep American South feel and vibe to it. It reminded me quite a bit of tracks by like Old 97s, that kind of alt country style.
Yep.
And obviously we're straight into the murder and that was probably one of my favorite tracks. This is a relatively short album, not in length, but in number of tracks. There's only nine tracks. They're all quite long. But then we get into track 2. I Had a Dream, Joe.
I had a dream. I had a dream. Joe. I had a dream, Joe. You were standing in the middle of an open road. I had a dream, Joe. Your hands were raised up to the sky. Your mouth was covered in foam. I had a dream, Joe. Shadowy Jesus.
And again, particularly on the second listen, I really started to like that one. First time round, which is weird, even given that you've got that kind of choir-like intro, I actually found it really hard to tell the difference between track 1 and 2, to the point where I actually started to wonder, is this a concept album? And I don't think it is,
No.
but I'm not going to lie, as much as I enjoy his voice, I have a lot of trouble understanding a lot of the lyrics that he's singing. But there are very obvious repeated motifs and themes and stuff throughout. So yeah, I did start to wonder at this point if it was a concept album.
It's not, and I'd say probably none of his albums are, but this and Murder Ballads in particular, because and I think it's his love of that Southern James Elroy, Jim Thompson, that gritty, overly violent crime fiction.
Yeah.
So many of the songs have characters.
Yeah.
And so
It's like Jim Croce.
Kind of like Sergeant Pepper almost. Every song is about someone. And so you kind of automatically think, oh, maybe they're all in the same world. But I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
But it does, I get where you're coming from. It does kind of feel that way.
Are you a Jim Croce fan at all?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, all right. So I can...
Hello, brothers in folk.
So I can take his albums off my list to give you at some point then.
I'll listen to them anyway, but for the purposes of the show.
Well, then we get into my favorite track from this album. Track 3, Straight to You.
Not surprising.
Now the light in our window is fading, and the candle at the gutters on the ledge will now sorrow. Here comes a stealing, and I'll cry, girl, but
Super standard chord progression,
Fucking
but it
beautiful
works
song.
for a reason. Yeah, I really like that song. Like it a lot.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, you won't be surprised. By far the biggest hit off this album. That
doesn't surprise me. It's the only
it's
the only real song that
one
I
of
think,
his biggest hits.
It's the only real song that I think could have had radio airplay at all. Most of the other ones just aren't fit for It's like I don't know if you're a fan of Frenzal Rhomb. I think we spoke about this. You went to did you go to college with Jay or something? Yeah, we spoke about Cocksucker.
Jay and Ben, we're in the same group of friends. Yeah.
So Frenzal Rhomb, who I'm a big fan of, they finally write a song that is like fit for radio airplay. It's like a perfect pop punk song where everything else they do is just like dirty, grungy, gutter punk, and they call it Cocksucker just to be sure that it can never be a hit.
Yep. Love it. Straight to You is it's kind of in that red right hand.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Where the Wild Roses Grow. It's one of the perennial kind of radio hits. I think I Had a Dream, Joe, was a single as well and did okay.
Yeah. I like.
But he's never been a kind of a. He's like Tom Waits. He's one of those artists that is iconic, beloved by hordes of fans.
Yeah.
But has never really had, with the exception and obviously the Kylie duet and there's also a PJ Harvey duet off that same album. I mean, they're radio hits because of the other person.
Yep.
Not because it's a Nick Cave song.
Yeah.
It's because he happened to be really good friends with Kylie, and he'd always wanted to do a song with her.
Yeah.
So he said, I wrote a song to do with you where I murder you with a fucking rock.
Moving on to track 7, John Finn's Wife is another one that
geez,
stood
we're
out to me
jumping
as one
ahead.
I like.
Well, a midnight came and a clock did strike, and in she came, and did John Finn's wife, with legs like scissors and butcher's knives, tattooed breast and flaming eyes, and a crimson carnation in her teeth, carving her way through the dance floor. And I'm standing over by the bandstand, every eye gaping on a John Finn's wife, every eye gaping on John Finn's wife.
Again, it's one that, like, structurally in its songwriting is very similar to track 1. As I think a lot of the songs on this album are, I do think that this album has a nice flow to it, and thematically it feels like an album to me. You know, like we spoke a couple of weeks ago when we looked at Fountains of Wayne, how eclectic the styles on that album are. And I think it's really interesting, given how eclectic I think Nick Cave is and how it's almost hard to define his style. I think this album actually does a really good job of tonally sticking to a style. Like I think the songs themselves are more eclectic rather than the styles throughout the mix of songs, if that makes sense.
I think over his career, Cave is very, very... He's evolved enormously, more than any artist I like, probably. But I think each album, as a self-contained unit, always has an identity.
Yeah,
and
you can feel that.
An album from 1980, the early 80s and the early 90s might, on their surface, seem like completely different artists. Within the confines of the album, they are a unit, and there is a kind of an identity to the songs all fit together as a...
And it makes for a really nice listen. Like I said, this is a fairly short album. It's only 9 tracks. It's really consistent. It's really high quality. I personally think the mix is good. Although I must say, re-listening to it right now, after having read what he's saying, I do think, given how high energy a lot of these songs are, like John Finn's Wife we were just listening to, where he's almost scream singing a lot of the lyrics, and it is quite punky. It does sound a little weak, I think, in the mix. So I kind of understand where he's coming from.
I think if you have the inclination... there's a number of live performances, but there was a release called Live Seeds.
Okay, yeah.
Which was a particular tour that I did go to. That's an interesting listen now that you've kind of listened to an album, because from memory, and I can't think of the track listing off the top of my head, but I'm fairly sure, given the time it was released, it's probably got a live version of Jack the Ripper, for example, and it'll give you a really good sense. Songs like Jack the Ripper, Deanna, Mercy Seat, there are a specific tracks that, much like when it's a weird stretch, but when you look at something like Rory Gallagher or Dire Straits is a good example. Everyone knows Sultans of Swing.
Yeah.
But if you've ever seen Dire Straits live, the single of Sultans of Swing is a different fucking song.
Yeah.
Because Sultans of Swing live is about 15 fucking minutes.
Yeah.
It's not a 3-minute radio-friendly track.
Yeah.
And it's different. It's raw. It's improvisational. It's never the same 2 shows in a row. Even on the same tour that you go 2 nights in a row, it's a different song. And it's a little bit that way.
Yeah.
Where there are certain tracks where kind of Nick just takes the calipers off and just fucking lets loose.
Yeah.
And that's probably, I think, partly what he's referring to, that this is a little bit produced.
Yeah.
Where this was after albums like Tender Prey and The Good Son, which were they were a series of songs, and they're awesome albums. They're really fabulous. But he really kind of got into his storytelling that he'd do. Murder Ballads that followed this, he got into even more, where every song is like a short story.
Yeah.
And in a live setting, he can really go to town on that.
Yeah.
She's screaming. dreams of Jack the Ripper. Every time I try to get back in, I kiss well, I got a woman. She strikes me.
Yeah, I really, really liked this album. I think this is one of the best ones you've given me since I can't remember, but I really like this. I'm an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
It like to the point where if I see any Nick Cave album at the record shop, I'll probably just pick it up just to give it a spin and see what it's like, because I liked this so
good
much.
man.
I can just assume that I'm in.
See, I will give you Door Door at some point because it's utterly different.
Yeah.
They're teenagers in Door Door.
Yeah.
And it, but I won't give you another Nick Cave album if that's the case, because hopefully you will continue your exploration.
I will for sure. I'm gonna take a risk next week. Not a risk in terms of like, because I'm sure that I'm concerned that you'll know this, and I'm just gonna have to go to my backup. How familiar are you with The Cure?
Like Robert Smith, The Cure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a band that I'm aware of. What are you asking?
So you've never listened to a Cure album?
I think I've got one on a digital library somewhere. Is there one called Head?
Head on the Door?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that
Holy
one?
shit. Yeah, that is one. This is wild to me. I'm a massive Cure fan.
Like, I know a bunch of songs.
Okay, all right. The only reason I haven't given you a Cure album to this point is because I thought for sure you would be familiar with them. So this opens everything, because I was
This is going to make like people are going to hate me, but in the early 90s, which is probably when I would have kind of listened to a band like The Cure, I was too busy listening to like Bauhaus and Fields of the Nephilim and fucking Sisters of Mercy and being an actual goth. And The Cure always seemed like kind of the naff happy try-hard goths.
I mean, certainly by the 90s they were.
It's not to say not to say I don't love some of their songs. Like I love A Forest and
yeah. Well, I was going to
there's
say The
there's
Cure
some
went through a number of kind of different zones, I guess. Their more goth heavy stuff was not the 90s. The 90s is when they went quite poppy. But their first three
goth
albums
at all.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, their first three albums,
Love Cats
Pornography.
and,
Love Cats is off either Head in the Door or
Just Like Heaven.
or
and I like these songs. I'm not disparaging the band. I like these songs, but I Love Cats, Just Like Heaven. Friday I'm in Love.
Yeah, Friday I'm in Love. Well, this changes everything then, because I was going to give you one of their lesser known albums, which again I love. I was going to give you their 96 album Wild Mood Swings. But if you are that unfamiliar with them, I'm going to give you Disintegration, which is widely regarded as one of the greatest albums of all time.
I know it's the greatest album of all time because South Park told me so.
Yes. Even 8-year-old Stan Marsh
Robert
knew enough to
Smith!
say Disintegration is the best album ever. So, I mean, fuck. Okay. All right. Well, I'm giving you Disintegration next week, which I cannot believe you haven't heard. And excellent. That's definitely the biggest
Am I
album
going to
I've
know
given you
anything
then.
on this album, or
You'll
am I
know.
gonna be
You'll know
embarrassed?
stuff. You'll know stuff on this album. You'll know stuff on this album. I mean, I'm trying to think what some of the big hits were. See, it's hard for me because I don't know what the hits are. Because I know their whole discography. It's the album that Love Song is off, which I think was a bit of a hit.
I love that. That's great.
Yes. Okay. That's
Okay.
Disintegration.
Oh, good. I'm keen.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll catch you all next week with The Cure then. In the meantime, thank you for checking us out. If you're liking what you're hearing, then, give us a rating, share with your friends, all that good stuff. You can head over to patreon.com/pottymouthradio and listen ahead. I mean, by the time you're hearing this, we're 6 months ahead. So
We are living in the future.
Well in
We're
the
flying.
future.
We're in a flying car.
yes.
With
What? You had like a bit of a mind blank there.
I did. I can't predict the future.
Yeah.
We're in it. We're in flying cars. Is that not enough for you?
All right. Well, we'll catch you next week.
See ya.
And I haven't got a penny for to buy no more whiskey. I have to go home. Oh brother, my cup is empty, and I haven't got a penny for to buy no more whiskey. I have to go home. I am the captain of my fate, just the bit, the bridle, and the thrashing cane, the stirrup, the harness, and the whip and mane, the pickled eye, and the shrink and brain. Brother, buy me one more drink. Explain the nature of my pity. Let me tell you once again, I am the